And not only were the majority of the electorate beguiled into voting for that stripping away of the right to life of our preborn boys and girls, but also they were persuaded to actually vote for the legalised killing on request of defenceless Irish unborn children, which marks the 25th of May 2018 as a date in Irish history that will stand out and live in infamy, and that posterity will remember back with a sense of shame that stain on the history of our country, when the forces of globalist leftist liberalism succeeded in beguiling the citizens of the Irish nation to vote for their own destruction. Coincidentally, this meeting is held today on July the 14th, which is a public holiday in France, known as Bastille Day. But that, my friends, is where that coincidence ends, as it is the poisonous twin ideologies of liberalism and laissez-faire capitalism and socialism that were born out of the French Revolution of 1789 that have given free rein, culminating in the holding of a referendum on May the 25th to repeal Article 43.3 of the Irish Constitution of 1937, or the Eighth Amendment, to bring about legalised baby killing on demand, and the passing of the government proposal to remove the constitutional right to life for preborn boys and girls by two-thirds of those who voted in that calamitous referendum result. This public vote for death has its philosophical origins in the same French Revolution, when the treacherous Duc d'Orléans famously voted for death in the French Parliament to approve the regicide murder of his most noble Royal Majesty King Louis XVI and his Queen Marie Antoinette, and also in the anarchic reign of terror which followed in that country. Indeed, the concept of legitimising to kill innocent human life by means of parliamentary act and public pronouncement by way of a majority of citizens of a state voting in a plebiscite or referendum specifically held for that purpose, has its origins in the philosophy of the French liberal revolutionary Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who expounded in his famous The Social Contract, which formulated the false, pernicious liberal doctrine that majorities determine truth, which is a polite means of describing mob rule. Authentic Irish nationalism is diametrically opposed to such a noxious ideological outlook, and rather upholds the incorrigible and unshakable principle that the common good of the Irish nation into posterity, to rule over the national territory of this great country, supersedes all else and is the be-all and end-all of the very purpose of Irish nationhood and Hibernic national identity. The appalling, calamitous result of the referendum to repeal the Eighth Amendment is evidence that the Irish nation is not immune to the deadly global epidemic that is killing nations, and that global epidemic has a name, and that name is liberalism, to which the only effective antidote or cure is authentic nationalism, grounded in the best of national tradition, consistent with Christian civilization and proper Western values. And we are unique as part of a nation that has a proud tradition and a particular brand of nationalism that upholds the dignity of the human person and the right to own private property. As our martyred President Páirtí stated, we seek an Ireland not merely Gaelic but free as well, and not merely free but Gaelic as well. There is no greater freedom than Gaelic freedom. Gaelic freedom is the philosophy of authentic Irish nationalism, transposed into the laws, customs and constitutional order of government of this great country. Authentic Irish nationalism has its roots and origins in the federal, elective, monarchical government of the Irish High Kingship model, based on the Tanistry system of election of our nation's rulers. that placed constitutional limits on the powers and functions of central government, institutionalised the principle of subsidiarity through the provincial, county equivalent and local community devolved government system in the form of Riana Cuigi, Ruri and Riana Tuia decentralised administration. The Brehon Laws system of jurisprudence and the allodial title of private property ownership, copper fastened by the Brehon Laws, ensure that every Irishman and his family was afforded real economic freedom, consistent with the dignity of man. Contrast this with the new despotism that the Irish people are subjected to today, that has effectively stripped away the status of members of the Irish nation to being constituent members of a human herd resident in this state, eligible and permitted to vote in the various elections and constitutional referenda determined by the Parliament of our rigged system, to further diminish the personal rights and, in the case of the unborn children of our nation, to completely remove their fundamental right to life, to allow for their barbaric, disposable murder for profit by providers of baby killing to be exercised as a consumer choice. And the rigged system that rules this unfree state, that holds our great nation captive, is itself subject to a federal EU superstate that controls the laws, trading arrangements with the outside world, free movement of immigrants and currency of all the captive nations within this despotic empire. And Irish people are subordinated to the interests of production, and production, distribution and exchange are subordinated to the interests of parasitic international finance capitalism that has reduced our farmers to the status of serfs, our workers to the status of wage slaves, and by means of an out-of-control national debt or government debt of in excess of €200 billion and an additional €200 billion in private debt, has in effect mortgaged future generations of Irish people with the chains of debt, making them debt slaves to international finance tapeworms. As I said at the outset of my speech, the philosophical origins of this destruction of the Irish nation lays in the poisonous doctrines of the criminal French Revolution of 1789 that was summarised in the mob slogan of liberté, égalité and fraternité. Contrary to those false principles, we have no right to a false liberty to vote to mass murder future generations of our nation. Or free liberty to bring about cultural genocide by opening the borders of this state to mass immigration, to submerge this country with an influx of foreigners with the value systems and outlooks totally at variance with Irish cultural values and tradition. And in the case of Muslim immigrants, wedded to a barbaric ideology with the purpose of bringing about conquest through colonisation and settlement. The remedy for all of the ills of the Irish nation is authentic Irish nationalism, and that our patriot dead gave their lives for. Irish nationalism puts the well-being of the Irish nation and the welfare of the Irish people as its purpose and raison d'etre, and has the national idea as its guiding principle. That national idea is and must be the counter-revolutionary ideology of Irish nationalism that seeks to restore that perfect social, economic and political system that was at the heart of the old Gaelic order during the High Kingship and during the Hibernian Empire of His Hibernic Imperial Majesty High King Brian Boru and the Confederation of Kilkenny, and inspired our patriot leaders like their Royal Highnesses Princes Hugh O'Neill and Red Hugh O'Donnell and Prince Owen Roe O'Neill, Patrick Sarsfield, Robert Emmet, and in more recent times the President of the Republic declared in 1916, Páirtí Pierce, Sinn Féin leader Arthur Griffith, and General Michael Collins, the founder of the Irish state. We are the inheritors and the custodians of that same national idea, and it is our duty and responsibility to continue the struggle for Irish freedom, no matter how difficult or how hard that struggle becomes. With the people gathered before me today, I know that the national idea is in good hands, and God willing, we will not be found wanting in the demands of this noble duty. Aresh Arai.